All right, Ken Spriggs here with part one of my 2001 A Space Odyssey Discovery build. Very excited about this kit. Really awesome kit. And as I said in the previous video that I went over like a review of it. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I've been waiting for this kit for literally 40 some years, since like the early 70s when I first had just seen images of it. I hadn't actually seen the movie at that point and hadn't really seen it till I was an adult. But I really fell in love with the Aurora kits for the Moon Bus and the Space Clipper, and certainly, saw images of the Discovery, so I definitely always wanted that. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and begin a build on this and go over several things. I got quite a bit done on this first build, and I will definitely complete the actual construction of the kit by the second video. And then we're going to look at doing some painting and then talk about an interior for the cockpit and of course the pod bay, which I'm definitely going to be working on. So, okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Some of the main sections I'm not going to show putting them together because they're pretty straightforward. So let me go ahead and show you what I've got accomplished here. And I think you're really going to like it. All right. So here are some of the initial components that I've put together for the Discovery. I began just kind of dry fitting them and seeing how they were working, and then began with the antenna dish array, mainly because that one ring right there, you can kind of see that little white spot there. It was kind of bent on the sprue. It's very delicate, and so I didn't want it to get ruined in some way, and I thought it would be more secure if I had it glued in place on the kit, and it is. And then once I started doing that, I just went ahead and did the rest. These antenna arms were also kind of tricky, and that little teeny, it's really hard to focus on it. The very tip of that is just one little piece, very, very small indeed. I'd be very careful not to lose that to the carpet. But I got them in place. Not too many major issues. On the inside, you can't even really see it, but this arm right here, the inside of it, where the dish covers it, I had to fill in some gaps a bit, and I mainly just filled it in with some glue and then sanded it down. So this is all complete, and I can keep this separate because it's delicate. And it's ready to be glued in place. I also started working on this housing here, which is right behind the command module in the front. So I got most of that completed and put onto there. And here is the nearly finished nuclear fusion section here in the back. It went together pretty easily. You just glue the two halves together, and then you glue on these extra parts around the edges in these little sections right here. So not too bad. I'm going to leave this as it is for now. I'm not going to glue anything more in the front since I want to adapt this to be the battery compartment. So alright, so that's coming along pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and start working on some of the cargo units and kind of develop a plan on how to do that. Whether I'm going to do all the same type and put them aside, because there's actually A through E cargo pods, or work off of each sprue. We'll take a look and see what we have from there. Okay, so I finished pretty much the complete front section of these components. This little ring here with those little pieces in this part are not glued in yet, mainly because when I do a black base coat, I'm not going to be able to really get into there. So I'm going to have these apart before I do that. The rest of it should be pretty straightforward. This front piece is not glued onto this either for the same reason. I also completed most of the back. I also don't have this piece glued into here yet, but most of the components are there and ready to go. I put together two of the sections, and they have a little keyed piece that clicks into it. Let's see if I can get a shot of that. It's kind of tiny. It's not really large. I wish they would have done maybe one on each side. but it's fine. It does match up. Let me see, where's that at? Right there, actually. You really can't see it, but otherwise they'll line up pretty well. And there's actually two sections here. There's one right there and one right there. So that just repeats throughout the kit. So it's a fairly easy, straightforward build, as I said. Lots of pieces, lots of repetition, but it's coming together pretty well. And so I'll probably get pretty much all of it done all the way to the back, including the back engines. Figure out what I'm going to do as far as attaching this on. Still kind of debating. I may just figure out if there's a way to put batteries in the front command module and have that removable, but we'll see. That one's a little harder to do, especially once I get some interior. So we'll play with it, but I'm not going to glue either end on until I'm ready to do that. So, okay. But coming along nicely. Let me keep working on some of the spine pieces and then see what we can get accomplished. Okay. Alright, so I started working on the back engine nozzles and these big long tubes. These are kind of cool, actually. There's several parts that go together. You have the two halves, first of all, that glue together and make this section here. And a lot of the parts on this kit I really like because they hide the seams fairly well. Like all of this area in here is going to be hidden when you cover it up with machinery. There's a seam right there which is fairly unnoticeable, and on the other side, so that's not too bad. Same with the seam on the edge, you're really not going to see it. And then what you do is, once you have those two together, you have first of all these two little ring halves right here that glue around. They're like a U-shaped, and they just glue together to make a ring. And then you have 6 sections. Each of these are a separate section that just glue along it, and they make the little delicate edge, which has detail on the outside and on the inside. So it's kind of cool. I like it. And then when it's all done, this just basically gets dropped inside of it. Show that there a second. Get in there. And you have to line it up correctly with the way it's supposed to go. I believe it's like that, or possibly this way. I know these are vertical, and then you have, I think, 2 on the one side and 1 on the other. I'll have to look at the instructions, but that just gets glued inside once it's all done. So that's pretty cool. And then these are all exactly the same. They all go on the back of the engine module. 2 on this end which go into it, 1 in the center which has a hole, and the metal rod actually comes through and it goes into the end of this rocket tube. So it makes it even more of a solid fit. So that's kind of cool. It even has a flat end that it comes into, so I would imagine that it fits exactly right into the end of that to go the whole length of the ship. So, okay, great. Let me go ahead and finish working on these and get these all completed. And I have some ideas about gluing this piece. Not gluing, but putting some magnets in this piece here to go in the front of this. So that can be removed and you can put the battery inside. And we'll take a look at that and see what we can come up with. All right, so I have the engines all glued together. I don't have those engine grates or those little sections glued into the end there, nor are they glued into the actual engine part. Just wanted to kind of dry fit them. Probably have to glue these together at the tips right there and kind of fill that in so that they all are lined up the way they're supposed to be when I'm done. So, okay. But have those all completed. As you can see, those aren't glued in. But those went together nicely. Lots of really good detail on those. So those are completed. I have the back engine compartment completed except for the parts that I'm gluing on. And I have the other sections done. So at this point, I want to work on some ideas for some magnets to stick this piece onto here, and then we can get to work on the spine and get that going. Okay, so coming along really well. So let me see what I can do with the getting the battery compartment ready to go, and I can probably then see about possibly gluing these on. Okay. All right, so I've designed a way for me to be able to replace the batteries in the rear propulsion unit, so that I can remove, pretty much remove this from the rest of the kit, because this piece is going to have the other parts attached to it, and the stainless steel rod is going to come out of this, be attached to this, and go to the rest of the kit. So when I want to replace the batteries, I will pull this off of the back of the kit. If you can imagine this having everything else attached to it, and then be able to replace the batteries. And I've got plenty of room in here to accommodate 9-volt batteries. You can see I could really fit 2 of those in there if I needed to. So what I did was I started on this end here, and I have these little metal magnets. I'm sorry. They're very, very powerful. Very powerful. So they're going to hold it on very strongly with no problem at all, these 2 here. So what I did, and you can see the plastic right there, I just cut out some thick styrene stock, and I cut out a little flat piece that goes down inside of this with a rounded piece sticking down. This one's a little off center, but it's no big deal. This is all glued in with 5-minute epoxy, so it's really strong. These aren't going to come loose anytime soon. So those 2 are centered in the middle, and then on the outer unit I have 2 more that would reach. So to get them all lined up, what I did was I got these glued in first, and then let them dry so they're nice and solid. Then I took these other 4 magnets and I stuck them to these ones, and I put this over top of it. And then while this was on it, I taped it in place. I just put a piece of styrene behind the magnets that were just adhering to these, and put some 5-minute epoxy and let that harden as well so I could pull it apart. And then I just went in and filled in around those with some more epoxy so it makes it nice and strong. So in the end, all I have to do, it goes on. You can hear that big click. It just goes right on, it stays on. That's not coming loose anytime soon. I can hold the full weight of that with this, but I can take it off if I want to. So if I just apply enough force, as you can see, obviously with 2 hands it'll work a little better. So once again, so that's very strong, and that's going to do the job very well. Hold that on here, I don't want to break those. There we go. Yeah, so that goes on very nicely. It's a nice solid fit. There we go. Yep. And it's on there as strong as if I just glued it in place. And like I said, mainly all it's going to do is it's going to keep this piece attached to the rest of it. And it'll be, you know, supported underneath, and everything else will be. So that's going to work out great. So that's all completed. And the rest of the main parts are completed. So let me finish working on the cargo modules, and then we'll be ready to start putting this together. All right, so I've begun working on the cargo modules to go down the spine. And there actually are 5 main ones, 5 different sizes, A through E, from very small to very big. And so I went ahead and built one of them. I think this is like next to the smallest. There's one smaller than this. And it's a really nice fit. It's pretty cool. When I first saw the parts, I was thinking it's going to be a little bit delicate, because you have the bottom, you have 2 sides, and then you have 2 ends. So you have 5 pieces all together, and they all have to glue together. And at first it looked tricky, but then I realized they only fit one way. There's a series of little notches and grooves, and they're in a certain side. It's not quite in the center, so you can only put each piece in one way. So I went ahead and cut out all the remaining 8 because this one has 9 parts altogether. And so I'm going to go ahead and start gluing them together. And I'm using some Tamiya extra thin cement, which works pretty well. It dries quickly, but I can do one piece at a time. So I can do like one side and then do the end and do another side and so on. So let me go ahead and get all 9 of these together. And I won't bore you with showing you that on video, but let me get those all taken care of. Alright, so I have completed all of the 9 set of the C cargo modules. There's actually A through E. Let me show you here. So you have 6 of the A section, 9 of the B, 9 of the C, which I just completed, 18 of the D, which is next to the largest, and 18 of the smallest, which is the E. So I finished the C's, and there's 9 of those, and they went together really well. Kudos to Moebius, they've done a great job. I kind of like it better than just having one solid hunk of plastic, which would probably add weight to the kit. So they went together fairly solidly, and it's a nice solid fit, and they match up with very little overlap. What I did initially, and I'll kind of demonstrate on this one, is I started with the end ones, and so I could put one little bead, or pretty well a good coating of the extra thin Tamiya, which dries fast, and it gave me a few seconds, so I went ahead and put the end on, give it a few seconds to start to set up. Then what I can do is put a little bit of glue on the end of that one and one down the other side, put the side piece on, let it dry for a few seconds, repeat the process on the side and then down the end, put the last end on, and then the last one I had to put some glue here, along the edge, and then where the two meet in the middle, and glue it together. So it might be a little trickier on these larger ones. I think this is the A, but it worked really well. Extra thin is definitely the way to go because it goes on with a brush, which is what I really like a lot, so you can apply it right where you want it, and it dries fairly quick, and it doesn't really leave any kind of marks on the plastic, so it's a nice clean finish. Looks really good. Alright, so those are all completed. So I'm going to follow the same process on all of the other sections of these, the other sets I should say, and then cut out all the pieces first, and then once they're all cut out, section them off like I did, where you have the bottoms, the 2 sides, and the 2 ends, and then just put them all together. And like I said, they only go together one way, so it's really impossible to mess them up. I guess you could, but generally you're not really going to. And then once it's all done, and I have, there's actually going to be 60 of these little cargo modules. And you were thinking, well, there's 11 times how many there would be, but there really isn't, because some fill the entire spot like this one. Some it takes 2. So you have an odd number in the center. So there's actually 60 altogether. And once I get them all done, then I can go ahead and just start building up each of the spines and just working my way down it. So, all right, so that's coming together really well. So let me go ahead and work on the rest of these sets, and then I'll show you those when those are all completed, and we'll start getting them onto the spine sections. All right, so these are coming along pretty well. The easiest way, as I said, is to cut everything out, and then I just use a little emery board to sand the edges. I think these are pretty easy to use and they're cheap. And these are really well done on the sprues. They have very little cleanup once you cut them loose. Some of them, like if you see these ones right here, they have the connector on the part that's going to be glued onto the kit. You're not going to see it right there. Or it's like right the same thing where you're not going to see it. It's going to be glued together. So those are really easy to clean up. I don't have to worry about getting them too smooth. They can just be snipped off. So great job, Moebius. That's really good right there. You can see neither of those ends where they connect to the sprue are really parts you're going to see. So it's really easy to clean up. Just a little bit of an emery board, and it does a really great job of sanding it smooth. And then what I do is I just section them off, and so you have the bottom, you have the two different sides because they're opposites, and you have the two different ends. In this case, there's two different sets of ends, and then once they're all done, I just got some baggies and I just put them in it. Put the letter on it. So here's the C's. I already did the C's earlier. I showed you. Here's the A's, the bigger long ones. Those are all done. And then I have a bag ready to go for the B's, which is the ones I'm working on right here. So so really great kit with these different pieces. They're turning out really fantastic. I think it's going to be great. So let me go ahead and show you a real quick time lapse of me putting together the A's, the big ones here, and then we'll kind of get these all completed. All right. Alright, so I went ahead and switched over to the little cups, so it's a little bit easier to put them in here. So I have A, B, and C done. And working on D. D and E are going to be the hardest because there's 18 pods altogether. So times 5 parts, that's 90 pieces alone on these kits. Hardest part is just using an emery board to sand down the two little sides on each one. Not a lot to sand off, but for 90 pieces, that's a lot of work. So I probably spent a good hour and a half just doing that, and now I'm ready to go ahead and put these all together. So it's a really cool kit, but this is the most tedious part, putting these all little pieces here. So I'm ready to get these glued together. All right, let me go ahead and get that done. All right, so after a lot of repetitious work, I finally completed all of the cargo modules, A through E. And as I said, I put them in some little paper cups here so they're easier to get at. So when I start putting them onto these sections here, which I'm working on, I'll be able to just pick the ones I want. Now these two in the end here are the last ones I completed. There's 18 of each. Now E, of course, being the very shortest ones, they barely fill the cup at all. These are the next to the biggest length, so they fill that whole cup. And then the other ones don't have as many. The other ones, I think there's 9 of these two and 6 of this one, I believe. So now what I'm working on are the sections that you will then glue on the cargo modules to, and then they go onto the stainless steel rod. So each of these has 3 sections. So you have 1, 2, and 3, where these little nibs are. That's where they stick onto it, and there's varying lengths. So some of them have one that fills the entire length, which is the A. Some of them you have 2 parts, which are the other smaller ones to make that, and they all end up being the same length, whether it's 1 piece or more than 1 piece. And then on the ends of these, you have these little connectors that are glued in place as little ridges, these little pieces right here. So these come in 2 parts. You just glue the 2 halves together. The only tricky parts on these is where the sprue connected. You have a little part right here in this curved section, which is a little hard to sand, so I had to use a needle file. And then you have one of them has one of these little notched out areas. There's some sprue to dig out of there, so but not too bad altogether. These are really nice. They're glued on, or not glued on, they're on the sprue with only 1 connector, as you can see there, so very nice. And the connector is on the bottom, so when you sand it, you're not going to see it anyway. It's going to be glued on. So very nice engineering. They've done a good job for the most part. As you can see, like there's that part I just said right there. It's on a curve. It's a little harder to get to, but not terrible. And then you have, let me see, where's the other one? Right there, where it goes into that little carved out part right there. So you got to dig that out a little bit. It's hard to get a sprue cutter into that, but certainly a very well engineered kit, very thought out, very nice. So for the most part, it's been quite a joy to build. So let me go ahead and start getting these completed, and then we're going to start putting some pods on, and I'll show you how that process is going to go. And I had mentioned earlier about the stainless steel tubes that come with this kit. Very, very nice. Look how thick that is. And it's a tube, which is awesome because, like I said, I'm going to be wiring mine with the battery in the back propulsion unit. So it's going to come through this tube and all the way to the front, and I can easily fit some very thin magnet wire through there. So that won't be a problem at all to fit the, stop from wiggling. Yeah, some magnet wire of this thickness. Very easy to do. And all you need is one connection to get some power up to the front, and all the rest of the lights can be wired off of it. So, and very, very strong, very hard to flex. So kudos, kudos, kudos to Moebius on this. When I first heard they were putting in like rods or whatever, I was dubious, but I'm very impressed, very, very impressed. Stainless steel, so they're not going to rust, not going to be any problems. Very strong indeed. So excellent. All right, so let me get these finished up, and then we're going to start building some cargo module sections. All right, so I'm just about ready to start working on the putting the modules onto the spine sections. And I'm going to begin with the rear of it, from the propulsion unit up to the communications array. And as you can see from the instructions here, there are 4 sections right there. And then the communications array has its own cargo pod sections. It's actually more of a square configuration instead of the triangular. And then those are all one piece because that's one of the rods. Doesn't seem like that from that picture, but that's actually a fairly sizable piece. This big rod right here. And some of it goes into the cargo or the propulsion unit. It goes all the way back to that center piece right there. It sticks out through the back, so it's pretty long. And then it meets right in the middle of the communications array right there. Right in the center, the 2 pieces meet. And in the middle there, you have this little section, and it goes, it's the same length as this. And there's a single little thinner rod or tube right in the middle, and that's what where the two rods meet. And then you can glue them in the center. And what I'll probably do is glue the front one onto it and not glue the back one, so the whole piece is removable in the middle. So I can transport it if needed, and not have this big long 42-inch kit. So what's going to happen then is when these two are glued together, this goes on top, and then it's surrounded by cargo modules. So you're not going to see this squared off piece. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get this glued together. I wanted to show that to you first. I'm not going to glue this into it because it has to be able to move around in there so that the tube can be put through it. It doesn't have just a set place for it. It can move around in there, so I want to keep it free. So let me get that glued together, and I'm going to get the pods glued onto the communications array, and then we'll start putting these other ones together. Okay. So here's the finished sections, cargo modules for the antenna array. And this has like a 4-sided configuration if you count the one on top, which is a separate shape. And these are all basically in a square configuration. The remainder will be in a triangular. And I don't have any of this glued in place, but you can see how long that's going to be. Try to get a better view. There we go. All right, and the tube actually comes out through the back and goes into the center engine column. It doesn't have one of these little plastic cylinders sticking out, so it has its own that comes through. And it's nice and supported because it goes from the complete back of the ship all the way through to the command module. So very, very solid. And as I said, my piece here in the front is going to come off. So this entire tube will not be glued in here. It'll be glued in this section. So from this curved piece through this, it'll be glued and glued into this entire spine with all these pieces glued on. And likewise, I probably won't glue it on to that front section, so it can be removed for purposes of transporting it if I need to, or that kind of thing. So, okay, so looking pretty cool. Definitely a far easier design than working on the resin versions. Stargazer model was awesome. It's an awesome kit, but the panels like this, they just have a smooth edge, no little keyed parts to attach them to. Far more difficult to center them in place. This was still a little tricky because there was a little bit of play back and forth, but it turned out really nice. You do want to make sure that whatever the configuration of these for the different parts, that one end piece that has the little raised panel with the ridges, you want that always on the outside, so you know you can do it the right way. Otherwise, you might put it on wrong, especially for the parts that have two different little nubs you can stick them on. So, okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting on the panels onto this section here, and then I'll be ready to start getting that glued together in some permanent configuration. Okay. All right, so I've completed the rear four sections of the cargo pods, as you can see. And these are best done if you do them separately like this. What I did to make it easier to do is I put a little black dot right there with a felt tip marker on the top center, so I could orient them and know where they were going. And then that way, when I followed the instructions, and they're really well done, you can see like the green ones in the back there are the far side on the top, the red ones are the foreground on the top, and then the blue sections are the bottom. So all you do is just work your way down each spine and you just put them where they belong. And since I have them all arranged in cups, I can just take them out. So I took out, I believe this is D and E, here's A on the bottom, here's E and D, and you just put them on the right sections there. The little short ones are a little trickier. You have to kind of stick them on there, and when they start drying, you can position them so that they're straight. And what I like to do is just eyeball them like this. You can see that turned out pretty well. They're all nice and straight. So that's easy to do. It's fairly straightforward. And then you finish all four of them. And what I used was the regular Tamiya cement. It's a little thicker, so it didn't dry as fast as the ultra thin, extra thin, sorry. And got them all positioned. And for some of them too, once I got the two on there, I can just sit them flat on a surface and just let them position there and harden. So I got them all four done. This is the entire back section behind the antenna array, back to the propulsion unit. So let me go ahead and get them on the rod and put them on there, and I'll show you how those are going to look. All right, and it's a little hard to get this all into camera because it's very long, as you can see. It's probably, let's see, 42-inch kit. Half of that, we're looking at 21 inches, almost 2 feet long. But there you go, that's how that's going to look. And I don't have it glued in place, I'm just kind of holding it and sticking out of the back there. But this kit's really well engineered and designed. You can see that, they're all nice and aligned, and they're not glued in permanently yet either. So, but the trick to this kit, especially with the resin ones that I built, is that you have all of these panels straight down lined up directly with each other. And that's really tricky, but it turned out really well with a little shot there. There you go. You can see they're all nice and lined up, nice and straight, very, very well engineered. So that's pretty cool. So what I'm going to end up doing is this whole section right here, as you can see, this is all going to be glued together. I'm going to have from this section here all the way up through the antenna array all glued in nice and solid. So then the whole front part will be a separate section, and that will just go into the middle here just like this does. But I'm going to glue this onto there. I'm going to glue these onto that tube and into it's not going to be glued into this part won't be glued. It'll be glued into this section, which I showed you is connected with a magnet. So, and then let me pull that off a second. Let me show you what else I did there. Okay, so since this tube is solid and it goes all the way to the back of the kit into the engine tube there, I used my Dremel and a cutting tool, and I gouged out a little hole and then drilled it out a little bit so I can accommodate the wiring. So once this is all attached together, I'm going to run some thin wiring through that tube, and then this part of course will be inside of this back unit, and so the wire will come out and it will be wired into a battery, probably a 9-volt battery. So so ultimately this whole piece right here that you see is all going to be one solid piece, all going to be glued together, and wiring coming out. And then obviously the magnets will connect it onto the rear propulsion unit, which will have the back pieces glued on, the engine tubes. And then the front section will be another whole half that will go together in a similar way. Complete the same spine, complete the front command module, and then be able to put the whole thing together. Okay, so beautiful, beautiful kit. I really like how this is coming along. Let me go ahead and get these all glued together, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video for this week. Okay. All right, so I began by gluing the rod halfway into the antenna array, and I measured it off so that it would only be halfway through, because the front one has to go in halfway as well. So I put some 5-minute epoxy, and that's pretty well set up now, so that's not going anywhere. So now I'm going to go ahead and start putting these modules on one at a time, and I'm going to glue those down onto the metal as well. I'm just going to use some Tamiya cement, because they don't have to be that solid. They're not going anywhere, and that will secure it on. This I was more concerned about because it's going to hold the weight of the rest of it. So, all right, let me go ahead and get these cargo pods on, and then we'll start getting this glued onto the back section. Okay. All right, and here is the completed back section from the antenna array. Back through the front cone section here for the propulsion unit, and this is all glued together and solid and completed, as you can see. Sizable piece for sure, and this is only about half of the kit, pretty much almost exactly half. And so let me go ahead and get it inside of here. And these back engine tubes are not glued into place yet. I also didn't put the back pieces in because I'm painting them black first. But I just wanted to kind of mock that up a bit. So let me get this together and I'll show you how that's all going to look. All right, and there you go. And that magnet is holding really well. It's nice and solid on there. So I don't even have to hold it by that piece. It's holding the full weight of that front section. So looking really good. There's that iconic view of it that I showed in the beginning. Slowly scrolling past the camera. So this whole section is pretty much done, other than gluing these on and putting the little engine exhaust thrusters inside of it. The rest of it is all glued and completed. Very nicely aligned, looking really good. So I'm going to do one more thing and then I'm going to wrap this video up. I'm going to put the rod in the front of it, and I do have the command module kind of taped together, as you can see over there. I'm going to put that in just to kind of give you the idea of the length and the scale of this kit. It's just very, very epic. So, all right, let me get that and I'll show you how that's going to look. All right, so here you go. So let me kind of pan across. And obviously there are no cargo pods to give this a little more structure, but there's the complete length of that kit. Quite phenomenal. So coming along really well. Next video I will complete the front half there, since I already have the my little cups of the cargo, or the cargo modules. So I'll be able to make short work of this piece here. And I'm still waiting. I'm not going to put that front command sphere together until I get the interior done. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thanks for sticking in there. Sorry for the length of it, but quite a lot done on this kit. And it's definitely quite a marvelous kit and coming along fantastically. So, all right, I will see everyone again probably next week. And thank you to all my subscribers, and stay tuned. All right.